Good evening, Eric, and all our other friends who have tuned in today. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to do a workshop relating to the environment and about healing, of helping people find and create stories relating to the environment. The reason I chose this topic was because I am really deeply concerned about what's happening to the environment. There are so many red flags around us. We've had floods, we have had extended summers, snowstorms, pollution, pollution in the seas, atmospheric pollution with air quality falling miserably, even in the capital city of India. Not long back, we learned, at least in India, some of us learned for the first time what a tsunami was. We had never heard the word before, and it opened our eyes to a whole host of environmental issues. And Chennai has also been besieged by heavy rains, floods, and very erratic weather patterns. So, part of all this is man made, part of it is just, we can attribute it to climate change. But I thought we should take a pause and think about what we are doing to precipitate the situation. So I'd like whoever's is attending the workshop to just put down a few. I'm only asking you for 5 or 6 points, things that you think we are doing wrong as a society and as people. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. If you can just think, what is it that we are doing wrong to trigger, let's say, changes in climate or pollution or demands or unreasonable demands on our energy, whatever. If you can just list about, I just need about 5 or 6 things.
Shall we write it on paper or into the Zoom?
Yes, on paper, and then if whoever can share it,
We should not write it into the chat section now.
That's all right if they do.
Oh, okay.
So are we done? There's one response from Ramya on the chat, and she says that exploiting, she uses the word exploiting, and she's absolutely right. Every single house, independent house in her neighborhood is becoming a 2-3 floor apartment, and there are no trees around. I can't agree with Ramya more. That's happening across all our cities, and that is one of the major issues. The next response is from Nirupama, who says, looking at nature as just a resource to be exploited for human benefit. And Eileen has put down these points: industrial farming, damage to the earth soil, industrial animal farming, and use of plastic. Every one of this is very, very valid, and we will be talking more about this as we go along. And Nirupama has said, taking the benefits and externalizing the costs. Absolutely. We don't, take any ownership for the damage we are creating. And we are just enjoying what nature has given us for as long as we can. And God knows what the future might hold. Is there anybody who'd like to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
As far as my knowledge is concerned, we have to follow 4 R's.
Yes.
Reduce the wastage, especially the plastic, reduce the wastage of water, reduce the wastage of food, etc.
Yes.
Then reuse. The things which are reusable, we have to reuse instead of buying again and again and wasting money and causing pollution, environmental concerns. Then recycle. We have to give awareness to the children and also the elders about the recycling of dry waste, wet waste, clinical waste, etc. All those by segregating into different color dustbins. And we have to refuse, or fourth R is refuse. Refuse the things which are not useful and causing a lot of concern to the environment sector. For example, say plastic. Say no to plastic. You carry your cloth bag or some other bag, which can be used again and again, instead of taking and throwing in the roads, on the roads.
Yes.
Number 2, avoid using daytime lights and switch off the lights which are gadgets which are not in use.
Yes.
Simply they on and they go here and there. They waste a lot of electricity. Next comes top priority in the major cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Kolkata. Parking is their main concern. Everybody parks in front of their doors, wherever they like, in the bazaar, shopping malls. They don't have a parking area. They should have a proper place for the parking and do not cause inconvenience for the people. So otherwise, the gases which release and the polluted oils which they are using is also causing inconvenience to the environment. Number 4,
can I just stop you there, Mr.
Last point, avoid plastic.
Yeah.
Avoid plastic. One-time usage of plastics.
Yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are very, very valid points. I think all of us seem to be very aware of what is precipitating and making the problem even worse. And I'll just read out one more input from Veena Hassan. And she says, actions contributing to pollution. Again, she talks of single-use plastic, littering, wasting water, food waste, energy consumption. Very, very spot on, Veena. And we will be discussing each of this and how we can relate stories to each of these observations that all of you have made as we go along. So I will first start with Ramya's response about trees and cutting down trees and then building high-rise buildings. Now, there's a very nice folk tale I read some time back. It's suitable for children and adults, and it's very crisp and tells it like it is and conveys the message. Now, this is about a forest. So, in a forest, all the trees were having a conversation amongst themselves. And the Jamun tree said to his neighbor, the sal tree, he said, I don't like these animals one bit. They come in here, enjoy our shade, and then what do we get in return? They leave behind such a stinking mess. And the Saltri said, absolutely, I completely agree with you. And I think it's totally, totally unfair. And I think we should stop these animals from coming to our forest anymore. The peepal tree, the wise old peepal tree said, that's not a nice thing that or the right thing to do, because nature intended that all of us should to live in harmony. People, animals, birds, trees, all of us should coexist happily. And it's a very wrong thing to just shoo away the animals, because it's a wonderful ecosystem. But the sal tree was very young and very haughty. He was not willing to listen to anyone. He said, I don't care. As far as this matter is concerned, I've made up my mind, and I am positioned at the edge of the forest. So from now on, whoever comes will be chased and shooed away. So a short while later, a cheetah came, a giant cheetah. And so this sal tree swung into action. He tossed and shook and made loud noises. The cheetah didn't know what on earth was happening. The cheetah felt it was right in the middle of a cyclone. It looked hither and thither, and since it couldn't figure what was going on, it just took to its heels and ran. And slowly the other animals that would usually come also came by, and every one of them was given this shock treatment. Fear gripped them, and it was a very strange occurrence. This had never happened in this forest before, so they all ran away. And soon all the younger trees, because the peepal tree was considered old and, out of his depth and not a great leader. The Sal was a new hero that they all worshipped, who came up with this bright, brilliant idea of chasing and shooing away the animals. So they all lauded him, and they said, now all of us are going to do this, do our little bit and chase every single animal that comes here. The next day, a group of woodcutters arrived on the scene. And then the Sal got very, very nervous. He says, what is this? Why are they here? And the peepal tree said, it's pretty obvious. There are no animals here. You chase them all away. And so they've come here. They've landed upon us, and there's no prizes for guessing what they will do next. And even as they were talking, the woodcutter began chopping away, and one blow landed on the Sal, and he screamed, ah, with pain, and a few other blows, and the Sal tree was gone. And so were many of the other trees. And so the woodcutters then bundled up all the wood and left, and they were talking amongst themselves about coming back the next day and chopping up the rest of the trees. The peepal tree then began to speak. And it said, you know what, you've seen what has happened. It's time now for us to get back all our animal friends. So he told the birds and whoever was around to please send this message out to all the animals and get them all back into the forest once again. So now they accepted the peepal tree as their leader. The Sal was gone, and all his bravado didn't work. So all the birds and other little insects ran to convey this message to the animals, and they all came back to the forest. So the next day, when the woodcutter and all his friends arrived, they were horrified to see all the animals waiting there to pounce on them. So now it was their turn to run. So they dropped their axes and machetes and all their tools, and they took to their heels and fled. So it's a very simple story. It just drives home the point that we all need to live in harmony, and that there is a wonderful ecosystem that is in place. And if you upset one little chain in the one little link in the chain, there's nothing but trouble for us. So it is a very useful story to convey to young children, especially because we need to catch them young, as the worn out saying goes, and teach them how important it is to care for our trees. And it's really not difficult, because in a country like India, we do worship trees. Every temple has a particular, what we call a sthala vriksha, which is the tree of the sacred tree of that temple, where people pray, and they tie threads, and usually it's by a snake pit, so they leave some milk, and you find bangles and cradles, and all many of these trees are wish fulfilling trees. So it's not very difficult for us to put these trees back center stage and give them the respect that's due, because they serve a very, very useful purpose. Now, the moment you chop down all the trees, there's more carbon dioxide in the air. And that leads to more heat being absorbed from the sun. And that is why we find global warming happening. Chennai is much, much hotter today than it was a decade ago. And the temperatures are expected to increase to very high levels in about 2 or 3 years. So unless we replace every tree that we chop with several other trees, we are going to pay the price sooner or later. The other thing that we are doing is destroying our lakes, but I will come to that a little later. So the story that I now want to share with you is actually a real life thing. It is actually, it's a kind of a biographical story about a lady who has set up a tree park in Chennai, in Adyar, in a little locality in Adyar, close to the Adyar River, and it is called the Koturpuram. It's a Kotur Tree Park, which is now morphed into the Koturpuram Urban Forest. Now, this person who is the brainchild behind this, she happens to be a journalist called Shobha Menon, and she had a long stint in journalism, and her work gave her a lot of opportunities to interact with government officials and other powers that be. So during one of the meetings, it was brought to her notice that the Public Works Department was soon to celebrate its 150th year. So the department officials wanted something to be done to commemorate this 150th year. And so they suggested to her that because they knew of her interest in plants and trees, that she create a tree park. And the space that she was given was a dump yard. It is where mounds of garbage had been dumped and it had all caked, and the whole place was, stinking, and it was a holy mess. But they were willing to give her that dump yard, and they told her to convert it into a tree park. All they did before she started work was to level it, remove all the garbage, level it, create a wall around it, and there was no piped water supply at all, nor was there any electricity in this 5-acre space. But hats off to her, she was up to the challenge. She had absolutely no help, whatever. So she, along with another gardener, slowly began planting saplings. What they did was to choose indigenous species of trees, because the exotic trees would never survive. Now, that is an important learning that we can take back from this tree park. So she began waking up every morning very early at about 4:30. She would come to this 5-acre space, and she and the gardener would plant the trees. They would lug buckets of water and water the plants. And soon word got around, and people who went on their morning walks would drop by and have a look. School children began to come, and college students. And then whenever there were plenty of people around, so children, of course, have their exams. So when the exams are on, they don't show up, or when there are holidays, they're all traveling or doing other things. So whenever there were people around at hand, she used to plant new trees. Otherwise, it was just a question of sustaining whatever had been planted. So they planted a lot of indigenous trees: tamarind, the Arjun tree, people tree, Ashoka trees, and lots of trees that had medicinal value. And there is a particular tree called the Premna tree in this park, which attracts a lot of butterflies and other, bees. So she's planted a lot of these Premna trees, and and a herbal garden as well. So in time, the park grew and grew and grew, and today the 5-acre plot has over 500 trees, easily over 100 species. And as I told you, they are carefully sourced and procured from various parts of South India, so that they take root and they grow well. But it's not been a cakewalk for her at all. Chennai, as I told you, experiences floods, cyclones, and heavy rains. So she's paid the price. She's been put through trauma to see that all the trees that she had planted and nurtured so lovingly would either be, would just be felled by nature to the ground, or completely destroyed. All the tree guards would disappear. But she learned her lesson. And she chose her trees carefully, and she spent every single penny very, very wisely. People told her, "Why are you carrying buckets? You should invest in a hose." And her response is, "I would rather plant a new tree rather than investing in a hose." But then she got enough people. She has a large group. They are called Friends of the Koturpuram Tree Park. And today they are all supporting her. And from one park, she has gone on to create tree parks in several other localities of Chennai. She has even worked with in a prison, and she has set up a beautiful vegetable garden, and where the prisoners actually work and harvest all their vegetables. She's set up another, in the mental hospital in Chennai, and they found that gardening is a very, very therapeutic and healing exercise for the patients. So it has grown beautifully, and she is a shining example of what an initiative started by one woman can snowball into. And if each of us can, at least help in tending to a tree, or putting a tree guard around a tree, or prevent chopping down of trees, or plant, if we have to chop one, replant another. Trees we plant, the beneficial it would be for our society, for our earth, and for our general ecosystem. Today, the park is buzzing with activity. There are people who come there for a morning walk. There are people who just come there and read. I have conducted storytelling sessions in the tree park. School children pay a visit. Severely ill people who are immobile, are brought on their wheelchairs, and the family members just wheel them around so that they can just get out of their homes and experience the beauty of nature and be out in the open for a while. So it's a great place, a wonderful creation right in the heart of the city. Now, the latest challenge that she is facing is because they are broadening all the area around the river, and they've mowed down a few trees. She is waiting for those trees to be replaced, the exact same species to be got from somewhere. It's taking far too long, according to her. But at every stage of its existence, the tree park has faced obstacles, either weather-related, natural calamities, or something like this, where the government embarks on some initiative, and a few trees have to be sacrificed. So I want to highlight her example, because I thought it should inspire at least a few of us to take up such initiatives. There is another gentleman called Jadav Molai Peng. He is known as a forest man of India, and he has created a whole forest in the backwaters in the Northeast. And his too is a similar story. So if we can ferret out stories such as this and share it with people, I think it would be very, very inspiring. It doesn't even have to be on a large scale. If somebody is doing it in a small way, say about 50 trees or 25 trees, it does considerably lower the temperature in the surrounding areas. So that is one story that I wanted to share with you. Any thoughts at this point? Or shall we just...
Veena has something to say. Go ahead, Veena.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Lovely listening to you. And I would just like to tell you, I'm from Assam, from the northeast of India. So I have personally met with my husband, Jadok Payang, who's known as the
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very difficult to meet him, but we had an appointment. We personally went, we met him, and he himself had presented us vegetables from his garden. And he's been invited to schools, everywhere, where he does guide the children and the teachers how to go about environment. So
Yes.
we had the environment month in our school, where we used to have a lot of skits, as you said, stories related to them. And in the primary, we had made badges. and we had named them eco warriors. So they would go around the class at their level, first in the school, then at home, creating the awareness among the young children. As you said, the word catch them young, how to keep
Yes.
clean the environment. So we elected the children who look after the classes, there, how the garbages are, where to throw the garbage, the dry, the wet. So they used to give talks in the assembly, how to go about. So at their level. And we used to give them some badges and we made them eco policemen. So they were
Yes.
very excited to wear those green hats, and all
Oh,
these
yes.
things I used to tell Jadab Payan. He was very happy to know about it. And he told
Yes.
me, tell your children, if we nail you, how will you feel? So why do people, they hang posters on the tree and then nail them? Don't they think about the tree? Tell your children,
Yes.
I'm very happy you're a teacher. So go back and invite me and call, more schools together. I'd love. And then we enacted a skit and about this, how you said, ma'am, about healing stories. So I had written a story about the magical tree, where one child is fascinated with the forest. He loves to go around, touches the branches and wants to see the secrets of what's happening inside the tree. Then one day suddenly a voice comes and the tree speaks that, hello, my little child, I would like you. He gets scared, but he says, who are you? Then in the story, the light glows and the tree himself asks him that you can be an eco warrior. Why don't you help me settling down and cleaning the environment? And you reuse. So creating through the skit. So all this
Yes.
we had done, we told him he was very happy, ma'am. And now when I heard you, I thought I must tell ma'am that I met him personally.
Yeah, I think you're very blessed, very fortunate to meet him. And I told his story the last festival, and I was very, very inspired by how he went about creating this forest,
Yes,
and all that he did. He even brought back red ants, I'm told, and
yes,
put them in the earth and mix them in the soil so
yeah.
that the soil gets more fertile.
Yes, he
So,
took us
and
personally. You must come, ma'am, once to Assam. You'll love to meet him.
surely,
See him, actually,
and
in his forest.
also, like you said, making children feel important and calling them eco warriors and giving them responsibilities. I think that is a huge boost to their self-esteem, and I'm sure they'll feel very motivated to do whatever they can for the environment. So I'm so glad that you shared your experiences, both with Jadav Peng and what he had to tell you. And like he said, even Shobha Menon is talking about abuse of trees. So she says, don't nail them, don't put up signboards on trees or tie them up in wires. All of these, they are living beings. And so, it's very important that we treat them with love and respect.
That's what he said. Same thing, ma'am, as you were saying.
Yes. Also, at this point, I'm reminded of the Chipko movement.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you remember this. And a few years ago, it is one of the greatest eco-feminist movements, and where women just began hugging trees when there was a move to cut them down and destroy them. So so all they did was to embrace the trees, and they stood there and they protested, and they didn't. This again is somewhere, I think, in Manipur, if I'm right. So that was the first eco-feminist movement, and it really caught the imagination of people, because women put their safety on the line and stood there. They just all of them held hands and wrapped themselves around the tree and stopped any efforts to cut them down. So I'll just go back to the chat window, and yes, looking at nature as a resource. So that is the danger that we are getting into. As it is often said, the earth has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. It's just that we are mindlessly exploiting natural resources, soil, all the minerals in the earth. Not so long ago, I'm sure you all heard about Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev. He went on a long, I think, biking expedition, campaigning for Save the Soil. Because one of the dangers of all the things that we are doing wrong is that the soil is getting badly depleted and it is no longer as fertile as it used to be, which is why we don't find enough, our plants are not growing as well enough or flowering as well enough. We have to replenish them. And it is very, very important to grow organically. Chemical fertilizers do more damage than good. So the soil is getting depleted. We are mining sand everywhere. Now there's no sand even for construction of buildings. Now most contractors are using something called M-sand. So these are the kind of damages that we are doing. And I'll go to the next comment. Industrial farming, damage to the earth, soil, industrial animal farming, and use of plastic. Now you can, I'm just going to be sharing a little nuggets with you around which you can build a story. And I will also be sharing other stories with you as we go along. Now, when I read this comment about industrial farming, now there is a wetland in Chennai called Ennore. And there are foundries, there are refineries, and other industries, and it's very close to a river, one of the four main rivers in Chennai called the Kosastalayar. Now, thanks to all this industrial pollution, enough damage has been done. There's a thermal power plant. There is coal ash coming out of the power plant. And marine life is being seriously affected. Air pollution is at its worst. So people are campaigning, but the damage has already been done. And the government and other authorities are just not learning. So a wetland, thanks to over-industrialization, without any thought to what is happening to the environment, has created untold damage to our planet. Not long ago, I was in a school in the Netherlands, and one of the placards that I saw there, the children had put up, is that if you don't have a plan B, there will be no planet B. So that is what we are heading towards. We just won't have a planet at all. Another very inspiring story I read in the New York Times is about a lake man, the lake man of India, called Anand Maligawad. Now, Anand Maligawad was an engineer, and he was working in Bangalore in an auto component factory. And one day he took a stroll out late in the night with his friends around the factory area. And suddenly he found himself sinking. He couldn't, for the life of him, understand what was happening to him. He thought he had stepped into some kind of giant puddle or something. And then he realized that it was actually a lake that he had gotten into. It was now a virtual cesspool with sewage and silt and plastic and all other kinds of muck that had been dumped into it, and he had just gotten deep into that water. Fortunately, he was with friends, so they with great effort, they managed to haul him up and get him out of that receptacle, as he calls it. And then he finally managed to get home with his clothes soaking wet and him smelling a great stench emanating from him. And when he went home, when he went to his apartment building, even the watchman, the security, couldn't recognize him and refused to let him in initially. And then he had to explain who he was and what had happened. So Anand then showered and washed all that grime and dirt and had a change of clothes. And he thought and thought and thought that night of what he could do to change the situation. So the next morning he approached the CSR, the corporate social responsibility wing of his company, and suggested that they also join hands with him and help him clean up the lake. Now the company officials refused. For one, he was asking for funds of a very high order. Two, he had absolutely no experience in doing this kind of work, and therefore they were not going to plow in any money for this venture. But Anand Maligawad was determined. So for the next 4 months, he spent all his time researching about how lakes could be restored. And you know where he found all his valuable inputs from? From the history of the Cholas and records left by them 1,500 years ago. And they had created a chain of lakes in and around the Deccan Plateau where they had ruled. One of the main points that he noted was that they used carved stones. And this was very helpful in trapping the silt and all the sludge. And then they had built ridges leading to a river, so that when the rain was very heavy, it would just run over those ridges and then go and join a river. And he had discovered many other important tips from reading about the Cholas. So with this information, he went to his company and renewed his request once again. This time around, they were willing to give him a listening. And they said, okay, we will go with you. So he got giant excavators and a whole army of people with him. And they first removed all the silt and the sludge from that and dumped it just next to this huge lake and created little lagoons. And then he unblocked all the channels of the lake, because very often it is when the channels are blocked that the lakes get, water doesn't flow, and there's a whole host of problems. And the first damage, of course, is done to kill the lake is by dumping all manner of waste, whatever we don't need. We munch on a packet of chips, scrunch the bag and just throw it wherever we can, or it's a soft drink carton or anything that we eat on the way or as we are walking, and we just fling it without any thought into this into a lake or water body or anything. Rubble from buildings that are raised. Now, demolishing buildings leads to that another major problem of all the rubble that comes from that demolition is dumped quietly into a water body. So he had to clean all that. He created a nice little lagoon around the where the lake originally was, and he waited for the next 4 months. After 4 months, the rains came, and they were heavy. And soon there was water in the lake. There were fishes. There were a whole lot of other, little insects and other things. The lake, the water in the lake was then pristine, pure. So armed with this experience behind him, he set about, restoring several other lakes. I think at last count, he has restored at least about 35 lakes in Bengaluru. And today he's made a career transition, and he's one of the most sought after restoration experts in the field of lake restoration in India. It's not that he has it's all very hunky-dory for him. Anand Maligawad has had to face threats from land mafia, from land sharks, who would rather kill a lake and then build over it. So they went around even threatening him and telling him that if you restore this lake, then your life is in danger. On one such encounter, Anand Maligawad turned around and told them, well, if you destroy this lake, you're not going to have any water to drink. So, I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes people just don't see sense. And by mindlessly building over our lakes for creating space for housing, for development and other things, we are also paving the way for more and more floods when the rains are very heavy. It's all very well to say we've never had this kind of rains in 100 years. But then when the rains come, there's no way for the water to go. And then we are all, swimming, literally. And people in the lower floors have all had to go up to the higher floors. And for safety, they have to remove all their belongings and household effects and shift them elsewhere. And their whole lives are turned upside down. So this is a story of the lake man of India. So you have a forest man, you have a lake man, you have the tree woman of Chennai. So these are all very, very inspiring stories that I think we should narrate and share with people, so that they can not only draw inspiration, but there are many pointers that can be learned. For instance, who would have thought about the Chola method, and that it would be relevant to this day? I'm sure in those days there wasn't so much plastic or thermocol or all the other packaging material that we have today. But yet they were far ahead of our times. And learning to plant indigenous trees, which is another very, very important lesson that we can take away from this, from stories like this. So I would just like to take any feedback on this, any thoughts on this?
Yes.
On this?
Yes. And by the way, I've discovered when I put my hand up, the electronic hand comes out. So there's some sort of artificial intelligence going on where the system recognizes my hand and electronic hand. I didn't even know. Okay, you said it.
Hey, Eric, and they also say don't put your hand up, because I believe the artificial intelligence is so advanced it can even scan your fingerprints.
Now it says, looks like you're done talking, so we'll lower your hand in 2 seconds. My God. Okay. You said a few minutes ago that we can take elements from what you're saying. We can take words, phrases, situations, actions, characters, and make our own stories.
Yes.
So, and
if
the,
you want
the very kind and generous title of this session is helping us to create stories relating to the environment.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, how can we do this? And can our stories, they can include, I suppose, possible solutions and improvements to these terrible situations. But
Yes.
so how can we create stories?
I will do that in the next segment, and I will draw responses from the participants, and they will in fact be creating their own story.
Very good.
So I will just take some reactions now and then move on to that. Is that okay, Eric?
Sure. We have about 35 minutes to go.
Yes. Anybody wants to share anything on Anand Maligabad? Any thoughts? Any pointers? So, Eric, will you please repeat your question?
Yes. You have very kindly and generously said that this session will help us create stories relating to the environment.
Yes.
And said that we can take elements from what you've been talking about, action,
Yes.
situations, characters, and make our own stories,
Yes.
possibly also including some solutions and improvements to dire situations. So can you
Yes.
say more about how we could create our own stories?
Yes. So I'll move on to that now. So one thing is that if you come across any initiative like this, or any person doing outstanding work of this kind, either in tree planting or saving lakes or recycling or whatever, I think we should get all the information we can about that person's life. For instance, Jadav Peng, when Veena Hassan said she met him and she talked to him and he gave her ideas. Fortunately, I told that story at the last festival, so we know what triggered him, what was the trigger that led to this, how he went about it, what are the kind of difficulties he faced, and then we can slowly identify other people, elicit information from them, and create stories around things like this. Now, for instance, I was on an Emirates flight not long back, and the blanket, when I opened out the blanket to use it, I saw the label said that this blanket has been made by recycling 99 plastic bottles. I thought, wow, now that is, something wonderful. And so I went, when I reached home, I Googled and then found out that Emirates has been doing this for some time. And they have so far retrieved 88 million plastic bottles. They crush them and then they convert them into chips and yarn. And it's something like polar fleece material. And then they make them into blankets. Now, I can use this information and create a story. Now, what if I told the story from the point of view of the blanket? Saying that, I love I love what I'm doing. I keep people warm. I'm traveling all over the world. And sometimes I meet friendly people who treat me kindly. Sometimes I don't. But, and you know where I came from. I was once in a landfill. You could easily create a story around that. And or you could make something a very informative, but a story with great emotion and turning points and sensitivity, and craft a story like that really touches a chord. For instance, the movie Erin Brockovich. I'm sure all of you have seen, many of you have seen this movie starring Julia Roberts, where she takes up the case, fights a case against Pacific Gas and Electric company and gets them to pay damages of a very high order because they had been poisoning the water sources in a place called Hinckley in California. They had been using hexavalent chromium for their water towers, cooling towers, to prevent corrosion. And they were letting out effluents into the water bodies around Hinckley, as a result of which so many people developed cancers and tumors of every kind. And it so happened that this case came pro bono to the law firm that Erin Brockovich, played by Julia, was working for. And one thing that got her very curious was when she noticed that there were medical reports in these case files. And she set about investigating why this landed there. And then she found that many of these people have had to pay for their treatment, had suffered cancers, their families were completely distraught. And she dug deeper and deeper and deeper. And as you say, Eric, I read a little backstory. This could have just remained a courtroom drama, but the producers and the directors all decided that the story should have emotional spine. So this was a story about a consumer advocate, a woman with 3 young children, not much formal education, taking on a big corporate, convincing her boss that they had a good case, and getting a huge compensation at the end of it all. Now, I'm sure there are many other inspirational stories like this. It teaches us a good lesson in story crafting also, because they say it could have just been, scenes about the court and what happened and the progress of the case, and in which case it would have had not much, there was no personal touch in it. But on the other hand, by turning it into an emotional drama, we're involving the people that were affected by this poisoning of the waters, their lives, how they were torn apart, how Julia Roberts, the Erin playing Erin Brockovich, how she managed her life as a single parent with 3 young children, occasionally having someone babysit, and of course a boyfriend pitching in. So there was a whole lot of emotion around this, and a very gripping story which won many, many awards was crafted. So that is a very, very good example about how a story could be crafted in that sense. And if I Googled, I just put out a Google search yesterday to how do we teach children to preserve planet Earth. So I came across 2 very cute stories. One was about a skunk and a dog having a conversation. And the skunk munches on a bag of chips and just throws the wrapper on just around him. And the dog says, "Why are you throwing it here?" And there is a bin for this. And then the dog, the skunk says that, well, the bin is full. So it was overflowing, so there was no place to throw it, so I threw it here. So then the dog says, well, tomorrow I am going to call a meeting of all the animals and teach them that we should separate our waste and then not throw them anywhere. And we should also teach them about, like Mr. Nageshwar Rao said, reduce, recycle, reuse. So whatever can be reused should be sent to a factory or whatever can be reduced should be, we should stop buying things with too much packaging. And so the animals all got together and they thought this was a great idea, and they decided to go ahead with having bins and educating all the other animals about keeping our surroundings and environment clean. Now that's a very simple story. So the thing is, we can take the basic, the core idea that we want to convey, and then craft a story around it.
Okay, well, you've mentioned at least two story making activities.
Yes.
And you mentioned this idea that the story should have a spine.
Yes.
Usually when that word spine is used by story coaches,
Yes.
what they're saying that the spine is that there's a character who wants something, who's
Yes.
on a mission, and the
Yes.
spine of the story is what happens along the way.
Yes.
And you also brought up a related point, which is that
Yes.
we should focus on a character who we can really identify with.
Yes.
So these are two story-making ideas.
Yes.
A character with a strong and clear mission, and that character should be one who we can really relate to.
Yes. Like you often say, Eric, you often tell us that try and tell the story from a single person's point of view. Like when I told the story of the University of Madras, your suggestion was tell it from a single person's point of view and talk about the turning points, the key turning points in the in that story. And what I mean by spine is, if you take the Erin Brockovich story, like the producers and directors deliberated on it, they didn't want to just do a chronological, a kind of linear progression kind of story, where they say on day one she discovered this, day two this is what she did, she met up with people and then she convinced her boss and this and that. There was a lot of emotion involved, and the character herself was completely driven. She was like somebody who was possessed. Nothing could stop her. She was hell-bent on she couldn't undo reverse the health setbacks that the people had, but at least she wanted to stop the damage from worsening.
She was a real life person, right? They didn't totally make her up.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
but I'm sure they exaggerated her. And,
no, she's acted in the movie as a waitress, and she has said that there was not too much exaggeration, except maybe about the way she dressed.
Well, I don't think I saw the movie, but now
you didn't?
I don't think so. But now you're telling me it's a young mother with 3 children, and it was played by Julia Roberts.
Yes.
Who was a very attractive lady in herself. So I think it's not just that we identify with the character, but we want to be involved with the character. And as a man, if I see a single mother with 3 children, I want to protect her. I want to help her. So I get involved in that way.
But the boss he took his time being convinced. Because for one reason, he was up against a huge corporate. And they were trying to mediate and come to a compromise. And she didn't want that.
Yeah, okay, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the viewers or the listener's relationship to the character. It's not just that we're going to identify with the character. We want to maybe be involved with the character.
Yes, you get so involved that you want her to succeed.
Yeah, we want to help her succeed.
Yeah, and you want to know how she's going to do it, and will she lose face, or will they lose the case, or what is going to happen? In which case, she loses her job as well.
Uh, can I say something?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, nah, I remember Erin Brockovich. I saw it really long time ago when I was young.
Yes.
And I remember what Eric says, because she is younger, she is beautiful, and she is divorced or she is a single mother. And I still remember that she was living in a slum sort of. I mean, she doesn't have money, and the way she was living and trying to bring her babies up, so it was all, and then you felt like, okay, she needs some protector or something. And that's what Eric is saying. They have created the characters in such a way, everybody wants to be involved in that story and be with her, be with that character. Maybe that's what one should do with you create a character in such a way that people get involved and they want to be with that character, and they want to see them, these character, be successful in saving environment or whatever quest they are in.
See,
Yeah.
it awakens the male fantasy of being, like a knight in shining armor.
Shining armor.
Yeah, and coming in on the horse and saving the young lady.
But in this case, the lawyer was initially he wasn't very encouraging in the beginning. He only relented when he found that she actually had some concrete evidence, and the corporate was pushing them for a compromise. So
Yeah,
there
she
was
doesn't
enough.
have a
See, us men in the audience, we don't care about that lawyer. We know he's not such a good lawyer.
Oh, come
We
on,
want
Eric.
to, we'd be a better lawyer for her.
No, but he was an excellent lawyer in the end.
Okay.
He needed to be sure of what he was doing, and I don't blame him. And lawyers are sometimes even worse. So what I'm saying is, pick up these inspirational characters. You don't even have to craft your story. Retell their stories, or like change the location, give it an Indian context, add some elements to it to Indianize it or whatever. And pollution is happening everywhere. There's so many things that you could do. And in one of the scenes in the film, they offer the opposite side, the corporate, a glass of water and tell them that this water is from Hinkley, and none of them are willing to touch it or sip it. So that drives home the point that while they are doing all the damage, they're protecting themselves. Anyway, this is not a review about the movie. This is about how, in response to your question about how emotional spine can be developed for a story, instead of making it a courtroom drama or something else. So I think we have about 15 minutes to go, Eric.
Yes.
Yes. So I just want to leave the attendees with a few thoughts. I go back to the time when I was in Rotary, and I ran a campaign called How to Reduce Your Carbon Footprint. And I would send them tips week after week. And some of the tips Mr. Nageshwar Rao has already recounted, like using daylight as much as possible, reduce, recycle, reuse. And he added a fourth R, which is refuse. Recently, when I found Amazon using a lot of packaging for their, whatever they sent us, I wrote a big article in a magazine called Down to Earth, and highlighting the need to reduce packaging by companies, delivery people, because it just leads to too much waste. Even forwarding emails or forwarding messages leads to a lot of energy being wasted. servers are using up electricity. So I think if we can pause for a minute before we hit the forward button or send button, I think we can create stories around all of this. Let's say you're talking about some man who spends all his mornings forwarding messages, good morning messages, hello messages, and some inspirational quote. Why can't we create a story about that? And how distracted he is in the morning. I think if we chew on these ideas, we will come up with numerous stories that we can craft and fine tune, and with a story with a message, not in your face kind of message, but a very subtle message which highlights the problem and how bad it is going to get. You know, the previous story teller, Juliana, talked about native wisdom. Now, this is what came in very, very handy during the tsunami. Now, many people didn't know how to react, but there were tribals who knew that when there was an earthquake and the sea was receding and you could see the bottom of the sea receded very far back into the horizon and you could see the floor of the sea, the thing to do was to immediately move to higher ground. Many tribals around the world knew about this and they quickly warned all their people. I read about, a tribal in, I think, in the Andamans who cautioned all his people in the community that it was time to move to higher ground. They were very reluctant because they had all sat down to have a meal, but then it was that quick move that saved their lives. So there's a lot of native wisdom also that we can ferret out and craft stories around about the environment. I think that is what I hope that this workshop would convey. So I welcome any comments, any thoughts. If you were talking about that blanket that I told you that was made from recycled plastic, what kind of a story would you come up with? Would anybody like to take a go at that?
I don't really like that idea.
You don't?
No.
Why
I
so?
want to put a blanket next to me that's all made from plastic. I might get cancer from it.
No, they would have taken all precautions to make it safe. You think they would?
That's what they say.
Then talk about that.
Well,
why don't we have a story about that?
Well, here's I don't know even.
Any other thoughts, please?
I don't use wool because I've been vegan because of the
Yes.
damages that I mentioned earlier. And so I wouldn't use plastic or wool
Okay.
as a blanket. So being selective, maybe a story about being selective and what are the choices? You know, maybe a
Yes.
playful way of just making intentional decisions as a consumer.
so you would use
Asha, Zoom meeting
No,
invite
she
ಆಗ್ತಾನಪ್ಪ.
wouldn't.
No, I
wool or
wouldn't.
no
I would
plastic.
use
I'm sorry. We need to mute people who are not talking. Eileen, would you use cotton?
yes.
And
But see, there you go. There's the rub, isn't it?
What?
Maybe I'd go to a thrift store and look for a blanket that has been gently used so that I'm not buying new.
But you'd like it to be made out of cotton, but you have to make
Yes.
sure the cotton is organically grown.
That is true, and there are standards that I look for now. If I am going to buy new, I only by with the standards of things that are organically grown and sustainable. I don't remember what the name of the standard is, but sheets and blankets, it's just a matter of being selective as a consumer.
Eileen, I am allergic to wool. So in this aircraft, I was feeling cold, and I needed something. And when you're talking, I completely agree with your thoughts about shopping responsibly, because there was a time when I even stopped wearing silk, because silk is got from killing the silkworms.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started buying something called ahimsa silk,
Do you
which
know
is
how?
made without killing the silkworms.
Right.
And then I also came across an organization called Beauty Without Cruelty,
Mm-hmm.
because all our lipsticks or our lip balms and all that have some animal products or the other, like even the silver foil that we use on our sweets. So if we read the labels carefully, yes, there are fewer options to choose. And Emirates was offering to their premium customers fleece blankets made of fleece.
That's wool, isn't it?
Yes, sheep's. That's wool.
But you say some people are allergic to that.
I'm allergic to wool.
Mm-hmm.
So unless I carry my own blanket or wear a jacket on the flight, it sometimes gets very, very cold.
Well, I think there's a story or a story element in there of they offered plastic blanket, but I can't take it because I don't want plastic. Then they
Yes.
offer wool, but I don't take it because I'm afraid they mistreated the sheep. And then they offer cotton, but I can't take it because I don't know that it's going to be organic.
Or
Yes.
down
Down?
blankets. Yeah. Yeah.
No, they don't. They kill a goose to take the feathers.
Exactly.
I can't take down.
No, you can't.
So then I can't take one thing. The character can't take one thing. And then suddenly, what can the character do?
Sit on the couch and put a blanket over your head that's none of those other things. I don't know. I don't know. But I love the idea of forming a story about protecting something, and doing that as a community. I think children have just wonderful ideas, and I am going to use that thread of generating a story that involves the protection of something that the kids come up with. So thank you
Yes.
for that idea.
Well, I was saying that a man audience member might want to protect a woman character, but you're talking about a different kind of protection.
I'm thinking, like I mentioned in the chat, of what did you see that filled you with wonder? What did you see that was amazing? And I would model that, and then creating a story of what would be in harm's way. How would the spider be in harm's way? And then brainstorm ideas, and then how could we protect the spider? And why? Maybe animate. What would the spider say? Animate the spider, and what could we say to the spider? And because why
Yes.
would people care? And why would children care?
Well, we care about spiders because they make webs that catch the mosquitoes, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
The lizards feed on them. They inspire us, like Robert Bruce.
Dude, I think you know one of my favorite science stories where a king doesn't like all of what is it? He doesn't like the frog sounds. So
Okay.
Yes.
so he makes all the frogs run away, and then the mosquitoes come. And he says, "Why are there so many mosquitoes?" And they say, "Well, you made the frogs go away." So it's about unintended consequences of meddling with things.
There's
And
a
even in the
beautiful,
Hmm?
there's one about a gecko who goes to the
Hmm.
chief. And I love that because that sounds it's just a gentler story, but it makes the same point. I can't remember who I heard that story from. It was on Zoom.
What happens in the story?
I haven't told it in quite a while. The gecko goes to the chief and says, "I can't sleep because of all the fireflies blinking their lights on and off." And then the chief goes to the fireflies, and the fireflies say, "Well, we're flying around the bull's droppings so that humans uh don't step in it." And it just goes, it's a cumulative story. And then it ends up that the fireflies are there because in the end, because so for the geckos to eat. And if there wasn't all of those other things in nature, then the gecko wouldn't have the fireflies.
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, that's the lesson learned, that we have to put up with the fireflies keeping us up at night in order for gecko to have the mosquitoes and to eat. That's
Mhm.
the summary of it.
Well, I know
but if
my wife is
and
always telling me, don't kill spiders and don't kill lizards.
yes, yes, that's an Indian thing as well.
Is it with lizards? That's an Indian thing. Spiders too?
Yes.
I knew not to kill spiders because I knew they make webs that catch little
Hmm.
insects.
Yes. And about this plastic, if we look at it very dispassionately, I don't think we are going to completely get rid of plastic because it has its purposes. Like when you're carrying a document and it's raining, you can't think of anything better than a plastic envelope or something to put it in. Otherwise, it's going to get completely damp. And I personally believe that maybe you should keep using the plastic till it completely wears out, or use plastic with lower microns so that they biodegrade.
Here, I'm guilty. I use these plastic things to keep papers in.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I mean, we're all guilty of double standards. It's going to take a lot to reorder our lives. Without plastic, without forwards, without cell phones, without whatever, without
And
traveling by
I
flights.
hear these electric cars. I hear to make these
Yes,
batteries, it's very bad for the environment. They have to
yes,
mine all sorts of things out of the ground.
minerals, a lot of minerals.
Yeah.
But anyway, Trump is clamping down on electric vehicles, I think.
Well, all right. Well, Rajesh says
So
something non-veg food. I think you're saying non-veg food is a problem?
Yes,
Mhm.
because of all the carbon dioxide that
Yes, yes.
that cows give out of and a lot of grasslands.
And
My
Well,
the
that's
mother and father both worked, and every night, they'd come home and make dinner. And for years, my father would cook a slab of beef on a grill on the stove. But I remember one day he said, "That's it, no more beef. It's unhealthy. It's bad for the environment. No more beef." And that was the end of beef. It was a big moment in our family. And this was, I don't know, 50 years ago. Still
so maybe
remember.
you should write about it, Eric. Write
Yeah.
a story about it. Craft a story around that.
He
What
also,
about other
Hmm?
non-vegetarian food like the chicken and the mutton and the fish?
Yeah.
The cruelty you mentioned somewhere.
Beauty without cruelty, cosmetics, in cosmetics.
Yeah. Then what about the food?
Yes,
Yeah.
that too. But
And
then they would
and then
argue that
people. Go
they would
ahead.
argue that it's the survival of the fittest. And even leather products. Are you
Yeah,
using
you
leather from?
you have to really look around to get a non-leather belt.
Yes, but you can find one and pay more for it.
Yes, yes. Okay, Sudha, I think we need to close the session.
Yes, please.
Will you say some final words, or will anyone say any final words? Yeah, let's come out of this spotlight. Here, there are 5 of us. There's 17 people in the meeting, and 5 of us have our cameras on. Even if you have your camera off, you're welcome to say something if you like. So, anyone want to say anything?
So I'll just say thank you to everybody who attended, and to you, Eric, for offering me a slot in your festival for this workshop. I hope it left people with some thoughts on the environment, some story ideas, and even if I've inspired a few people, I think my purpose has been served.
Sudha, thank you very much. Actually, in fact, I'm not a big, I do not know whether I support this activity environment, but at somewhere I do want to do something for environment. And maybe I do not know if I tell stories and try slowly take us tiny steps towards, saving environment and ecology, then maybe that will help. And I'm really thank you. You mentioning Erin Brockovich, because that was one of the important film in my life, and I could see now towards like how we can use that kind of stories maybe to spread awareness, and especially catch our little children, and make them aware about the danger of all these activities. Thank you very much, Sudha.
Not at all. If you start working in this area, you'll get more ideas from people around you and what they're doing.
Great. Okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
Eric. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.